Hello and welcome to this astrological forecast for March 2025. In this video, I will be examining in detail the various astrological events of the month. And believe me when I say we have quite the month ahead of us. The entirety of the month is encompassed by our first eclipse season this year, a time when fateful changes beyond our control can and do take place. Venus is retrograde all month, signifying a powerful time of reflecting on our relationships and what we value most. As if that wasn't enough, 2 weeks later, Mercury also goes retrograde, adding fuel to the Venusian fires of chaos. A dynamic Mars-Chiron square late in the month stirs up our unhealed wounds. Finally, at the very end of the month, Neptune ingresses into Aries for the first time in 150 years. One of the greatest indicators of change we ever see and signifying a shift at this time to a new era. There is so much more to be understood about the changes that are coming this month, so let us dive into the details now. The month kicks off with a hungry Mercury North Node conjunction in Pisces on March 1st, indicating not only indeed a hunger for information, data, or travel, but also fateful communication connecting us to people and events from other times and places, be they past, present, or future. A portal opens up to another realm where communication becomes possible. Later that same day, one of the biggest events of the month takes place when loving Venus stations retrograde in Aries. This is a process lasting from March 1st through April 12th, though we have been building up to it since at least late January. Those events since then and prior to March 1st having to do with our relationships and desires will be revisited during this time. Past relationships may resurface. Present relationships will be put to the test in some way. We will be reflecting on what we truly value, whether we want to or not. Again, this will be in effect all throughout this month and into next month. Since Venus begins the retrograde in Aries, but then retrogrades back into Pisces before eventually stationing direct on April 12th, this retrograde connects the topics of both the Aries and Pisces sectors of our charts. To get a better idea of how this Venus retrograde will impact you personally, consider the fact that Venus has an 8-year synodic cycle, meaning it retrogrades through almost the exact same part of the zodiac every 8 years, and thus you can look back in your life to what happened in March and April of 2017 and know that those themes will tend to repeat in some way this year during this Venus retrograde. You can also check out my 2025 year-ahead astrology forecast for your rising sign. As Venus crosses paths with the Sun during this time, disappearing from view as an evening star when closest to the Sun before finally reappearing as a morning star on the other side of the Sun, Venus experiences her descent into the underworld where she must confront the denizens of darkness that lurk within, before emerging victorious and transformed on the other side. This is symbolically the journey we all take during a Venus retrograde. Communication lines are blurred on March 2nd when mental Mercury conjoins nebulous Neptune in Pisces. This is definitely not a day where we would want to do anything that requires highly logical or structured thinking, for our minds are going to be in a dream world. While this can be potentially confusing, it is also highly creative energy excellent for fantasy, escapism, art, music, poetry, or the like. Beware delusions of grandeur in this connection when later the same day the radiant sun in Pisces squares optimistic Jupiter in Gemini. This is the energy of stressful growth. We are pushed to take on perhaps more than we can handle. Conversely, and especially with the aforementioned Mercury-Neptune conjunction, we may grossly overestimate our abilities, falling prey to false optimism. On the other hand, it is often under a Sun-Jupiter square where we are pushed into a most fortunate development facilitating our further growth and expansion, often involving our beliefs or worldview. Just remember in the midst of these expansive experiences that on this day you will not likely have the luxury of clear, logical thinking to which you may be accustomed. Quick thinking ignites on March 3rd when mental Mercury ingresses into impulsive Aries. From this point forward, at least leading up to Mercury's retrograde station on the 15th, we actually should gain some mental clarity even with everything else that is going on. Mercury does much better overall in Aries where it does not have to deal with the confusion it experiences in Pisces. However, Mercury was already in its pre-retrograde shadow by the time it got to 26 degrees of Pisces, meaning that all events for the first half of the month having to do with communication, information, or travel will likely be revisited in some way during the second half of the month and early the following month when Mercury is retrograde. This also means that our newfound mental clarity on March 3rd may gradually diminish as we get closer to the 15th. Regardless, Mercury in Aries will see our thinking and communication communication become much more quick, impulsive, direct, decisive, and focused on the here and now. Breakthrough action stirs our emotions on March 8th when the radiant sun in Pisces trines warrior Mars in Cancer, indicating a time when our conscious will or purpose works very harmoniously with our actions or motivations. Keep in mind that since this occurs right around midnight Eastern Standard Time, in many parts of the world the aspect will perfect on March 7th. I suspect that in general it will be felt strongly on both days anyway. The reason I say it stirs our emotions is because both astrological planets are in water signs, the cold, contracting element that is the antithesis to fire and is all about our internal emotional reality. This is a day or two where, whatever we are doing, we will strongly feel that we are ready to take action to make things happen. Loving words are exchanged on March 11th when mental Mercury conjoins beautiful Venus in Aries, signifying a day where our thoughts and communication are much more specifically focused on everything from love to connection to beauty to social harmony. Art and creativity are also probable manifestations. It is interesting to note in this connection that Mercury, now preparing to station retrograde, is conjoining Venus, already retrograde, suggesting that an event indicative of both retrogrades is likely to manifest on this day. Reality dawns on March 12th when the willful sun conjoins stern Saturn in Pisces, aligning our consciousness with limitations, obstacles, reality, authority, or structure. When the sun makes its annual conjunction with Saturn, there is often an increased feeling of heaviness as we grapple with hard realities. However, it can also indicate a day where something is made very real, whether that something is a reality we prefer or one that we do not prefer. With this being the last Sun-Saturn conjunction in Pisces for almost another 30 years, something may surface at this time that really emphasizes the reality of ultimate surrender and letting go. Sudden change rattles us on March 14th when we have a lunar eclipse in Virgo, made all the more unpredictable by perfecting in a near-exact trine with unstable Uranus. Eclipses are already erratic enough, but to have one take place so closely trine Uranus is like an eclipse on steroids. We will indeed see sudden, powerful breakthrough changes for better or worse on or around the 14th of this month. While eclipses are largely shrouded in mystery and difficult to predict, we can nail them down to some extent by examining the Saros series to which each eclipse belongs. This particular eclipse on March 14th belongs to Saros series 9 New North, which is related to great physical expression. It can be experienced positively, such as when beginning a new sport or workout regimen, or it can be experienced negatively in the form of accidents or injuries. The best strategy in dealing with this eclipse season, therefore, is to find a healthy and productive outlet for this excess physical energy while maintaining safety as a high priority. We must beware the Ides of March when on March 15th mental Mercury stations retrograde in Aries, indicating a few weeks of miscommunication, technological glitches, general confusion, and errors in perception. It is also a time where we will be rethinking topics having to do with the Aries and Pisces sectors of our charts, as Mercury will eventually retrograde back into Pisces as mentioned earlier. It is interesting to note here that both Mercury and Venus station retrograde in Aries this month, then return to Pisces before stationing direct, suggesting a strong connection between the two retrogrades and that much more focus, emphasis, rethinking, and reconsideration of the topics of the houses overlapping the Aries and Pisces sectors of our individual charts. Our hunger for commitment to a dream or ideal is amplified on March 17th when the radiant sun conjoins the North Node in Pisces, indicating a day of fateful rendezvous with those from other times or places that somehow assist us on our spiritual journey. Imagination, dreams, and visions are illuminated on March 19th when the sun then conjoins Neptune at the last degree of Pisces. There is much that we could go into about the powerful symbolic significance of the final degree of Pisces, with it simultaneously being the final degree of the entire zodiac, let alone the sun conjoining Neptune there, but it is beyond the scope of this forecast. Suffice it to say that an added emphasis of surrender and letting go, as well as the completion of a journey, is present on this day. We spring into action on March 20th when the sun departs from the mystical and imaginative realms of Pisces and enters fiery, primordial, impulsive Aries as it does every year at this time. The winter season has come to an end, and the energy of growth and renewal is pushing us forward into spring. Day slowly becomes longer than night. The energy ceases to pull inward, but instead begins to push outward. The seeds of what will come to be are now planted. A pivotal moment is reached in our relationships, desires, or values, and especially our reflection on them on March 22nd when Venus, still retrograde, aligns with the Sun, forming what is called the Venus Cazimi. This more or less translates to Venus in the heart of the Sun, occurring when the Sun, Venus, and the Earth are in perfect alignment. And it is a time when something very significant involving the current Venus retrograde is likely to happen. I often imagine such an alignment as the Sun beaming the energy of Venus extra powerfully to the Earth. And while I cannot say that is literally physically happening, symbolically it gives you an idea of just how significant this moment in time is for all Venusian matters. Those again being our relationships, desires, values, feelings, beauty, art, and creativity. It also marks the halfway point of the Venus retrograde. Incredibly, a second pivotal moment is reached just 2 days later on March 24th when we have the Mercury Cazimi, indicating some type of breakthrough event having to do with the Mercury retrograde and its themes of rethinking, redoing, and reconsidering matters of communication, technology, information, or travel. Since both Mercury and Venus align with the Sun in Aries, and since they do so only 2 days apart, it is highly probable that these two events are connected, and thus it could be stated accurately that March 22nd through the 24th will be very important in terms of these retrogrades and their events. In other words, the 22nd through the 24th is quite the hot spot for activity involving everything from our relationships to desire to communication to travel this month. Angry wounds are stirred up on March 26th when militant Mars in Cancer squares wounded healer Chiron in Aries. I'm not going to lie, this can be some nasty energy coming our way. However, even here we still have a choice in how we use this energy. On or around the 26th, if old hurts or wounds are brought to the surface, do your utmost best to utilize the development as an opportunity to learn. If there is anger involved, use that anger as a form of communication. Set boundaries as needed. Be brutally honest. Moments in time like this may not be fun, but they are necessary. You can experience this transit in pain and nothing more, or you can use it as a valuable and empowering learning opportunity. The choice is yours. A mystical shift in our relationships takes place on March 27th when Venus retrogrades back into Pisces, revisiting territory and thus events from late January through early February. This shift may be subtle, but it is definitely there for those who are paying attention. Almost immediately after this, later the same morning, Venus then perfects a conjunction with nebulous Neptune, blurring the lines in our relationships, desires, and values. It can also make for sweet, delicious, dreamy energy that permeates the day. Venus last conjoined Neptune while direct on February 1st. Thus, something may happen today that is connected with an event that took place on or around the 1st of February. With this being the retrograde hit, however, what occurs today will likely be more of an internal event rather than an external one. Venus will conjoin Neptune for a third and final time on May 2nd, and that is when we should see a potent external event manifest that is connected with the two previous hits, the final act of this ongoing Venusian and Neptunian dance. Fateful changes are stirred up yet again on March 29th when we have a solar eclipse in Aries. This is the last eclipse in Aries that we will have for years to come, finishing up major changes that have been taking place in the Aries and Libra sectors of our charts for the last 2 years. This eclipse also belongs, however, to the aforementioned Saros Series 9 New North, so consider what we went over with that earlier as applicable here as well. Again, eclipses indicate times where great and powerful changes beyond our control can and do take place. And these are especially likely to occur not just on the exact day of an eclipse, but throughout an entire eclipse season, for which all of this month of March does indeed qualify. Later that same night, our minds enter a dream world when mental Mercury retrogrades back into Pisces, causing us to revisit events from right around the beginning of the month having to do with communication, information, technology, or travel. Literally less than 30 minutes later, Mercury then perfects a conjunction to nebulous Neptune for the second time this month, fuzzying our mental focus while at the same time pushing our minds to creatively expand to the farthest reaches of the universe. Again, this indicates a revisiting of events from earlier in the month, except that, just as with Venus retrograde conjunction with Neptune, the events experienced at this time are more likely to be of an internal nature rather than an external one. Mercury will make a third and final conjunction with Neptune on April 16th, and that is thus therefore when we can expect to see the completion or culmination of this Mercury retrograde process, involving again our revisiting or rethinking matters in the Aries and Pisces sectors of our individual charts regarding topics such as communication, information, technology, or travel. Put simply, all of March plus the first half of April is one big journey or process of transformation. What is amazing about this specific conjunction on March 29th is that it takes place not just at the very last degree, but also the very last minute of Pisces just prior to Neptune's ingress into Aries the following day. As if Mercury, mythologically said to be the one who can travel between worlds, is somehow seeing Neptune off as it finally departs from Pisces and enters Aries after all these years. As Neptune makes that ingress the following morning of March 30th, we are truly entering unprecedented territory. As mentioned in the introduction, this is the first time Neptune has entered Aries in 150 years. Thus, it is a major indicator of the new era we are entering in 2025 and will be in for many years to come. Neptune will be in Aries until early 2039, during which time it will trigger huge cultural, economic, political, and many other kinds of shifts. On the positive side, Neptune will bring faith and idealism to the Aries sector of our charts, while on the negative side it can also bring confusion or illusion to this same area. A full delineation of Neptune in Aries is far beyond the scope of this forecast. Entire books could be written on the subject. A few key points I think will be of great importance, however, include the following. The idealization of heroes. Neptune rules all forms of fantasy and storytelling. Thus, when it enters a sign as heroic, impulsive, and driven as Aries, we will likely see a cultural shift in the direction of romanticizing the heroic, for better or worse. The idealization of war. Like it or not, Aries is ruled by Mars, and Mars is the god of war. Thus, when Neptune interfaces with this energy, we may very well see many begin to glorify the idea of war, far more easily turning a blind eye to its horrific and ugly side. Increased drive for spiritual awakening. When Neptune, the planet of spirituality, operates in the primordial fires of Aries, we may see a tremendous push forward towards spiritual awakening, especially people taking outrageous action and going to great and intense efforts to quote-unquote make their spiritual awakening happen. The dissolution of borders and boundaries. We must also keep in mind that at least for the next couple of years, Neptune will not be the only outer planet in Aries, for it will continue to be joined by Saturn. This extended Saturn-Neptune co-presence has already been with us since March of 2023 when Saturn entered Pisces. And now, as fate would have it, right as Neptune enters Aries, Saturn soon follows it in May of this year. Continuing the theme we have already seen for the last 2 years involving the dissolution of borders and boundaries, as well as bringing sober assessments of reality to the methods by which we typically escape from reality. We will examine these ongoing Saturn-Neptune themes in greater detail in the future as the two planets' exact conjunction gets closer and closer to exactitude. As a funny aside, I personally have a theory that we will also see a shift of some kind in the many and various ASMR videos popular here on YouTube and elsewhere. The diffusion of focus and hypnotic quality of ASMR is pure Neptune, so when this planet enters Aries, don't be surprised if ASMR becomes much more intense. March of 2025 is a hugely significant month. I get really annoyed and irritated at those quote-unquote astrologers who constantly overblow and exaggerate things for the sake of clickbait and easy views. But this month, I must admit, would be very difficult to over-exaggerate. We reflect on our relationships, values, and desires from the very first day of the month when Venus stations retrograde in Aries. We are pushed to grow and expand past our limits on March 2nd when the Sun squares Jupiter. We experience breakthrough action on March 7th and 8th when the Sun trines Mars. We must soberly assess reality on March 12th when we have the annual Sun-Saturn conjunction. We have our lives shaken up in highly unpredictable ways on March 14th when we have a lunar eclipse in Virgo trine Uranus. Increased confusion, chaos, rethinking, and redoing comes our way on March 15th through the rest of the month when Mercury stations retrograde. Fantasy and escapism are brilliantly illuminated on March 19th when the Sun conjoins Neptune in Pisces. Pivotal relationship and communication moments are reached on March 22nd and 24th when we have first the Venus cazimi, then the Mercury cazimi, one right after the other. Angry wounds are stirred up on March 26th when Mars squares Chiron. Further fateful developments shake us up on or around March 29th when we have a solar eclipse in Aries. Finally, we enter truly unprecedented territory and officially begin a whole new era on March 30th when Neptune ingresses into Aries for the first time in 150 years. So brace yourselves and hold on tight, for the rapid change that is to come makes this month one hell of a ride.